Be around online comic book circles and you start seeing some repeat concepts and jokes. Hank Pym beat his wife. Spider-Man must be miserable. Batman character is bad cause he's a billionaire. You see them repeatedly. One common one, however, that gets brought up in these kinds of conversations is a little bit of a weird, touchy subject. Let's take a little bit of a dive in comic book history, characterization, and the political nature of 2001 in America. This is gonna get funky. So let's dive into a fair amount of context. Marvel Comics has been around for quite some time. One of its main driving points, however, is that most of the characters live in New York City. It's the major DNA of its storytelling, characters, and so on. It's almost impossible to separate them. This connection has created a well-founded and grounded place for Marvel to explore the concepts of fantasy and science fiction. One downside, hell, I wouldn't even call it a downside, aspect of this is the comics tend to have to reflect how New York is in real life. And if they don't, well, you gotta make up a comic book reason for it to not be like that. It's not the comics, but here's an example from the MCU. After years of gentrification, the place known as Hell's Kitchen actually cleaned up, became kind of a safer neighborhood. However, that doesn't quite work with the whole story of Daredevil. So some of the big superhero fights cause a downturn of economics, destruction, and turmoil in this area, and now that place is starting to look a lot more like the classic comic book storylines. And repeat that a couple different ways here and there, and you got some similar vibe to the old stories in the comics. So, comic New York has to resemble real New York. Not that big a deal, right? Well, may I remind you what America has been doing in the political sphere for the last, 50 years. Through a large layer of shooting ourselves in the foot, shooting other people in the foot, and being just a general unpleasant country to be around, America has made several enemies. And I'm not going to get into the righteous justifications of any group that opposes America, just more stating the fucking obvious. And, well, a day no one can forget happened. And it happened in New York. For a brief moment, seeming all New York institutions that are connected to the grander aspect of Americana dove headlong into self-reflection sufficing of "we're still here"isms in the aftermath of 9/11. Saturday Night Live did it, other things did it. One of the big ones to do it was Marvel Comics. Of course Marvel did it. They're the New York superhero place. Some people don't remember the issue that did. It was Spider-Man, the New York superhero, and for the most part, people look back on that book with understanding, and not necessarily reverence, but seeing what it was trying to do. All except one panel. In the middle of the commotion of the comic, J. Michael Straczynski decided to place several villains in the story, in part to show even the worst of the bad guys of Marvel still see this as a tragic event, yada yada, come together. It totally tracks and makes sense. Kingpin is a New York boy through and through. I mean, just listen to him. He goes on and on about the Mets.
It's about the Mets, baby. Love the Mets.
Of course, he would be mad. But that's not what people talk about. Because in that very same panel is the one and the only Dr. Victor Von Doom. Now, if you are unaware, that final sentence probably doesn't raise any eyebrows. And hopefully, by the end of this, your eyebrows will certainly be lowered. But Victor Von Doom is probably one of the greatest villains in Marvel Comics. Certainly one of the most iconic and reoccurring. The only one I see more evil is Red Skull, and that's mostly just because he's a Nazi. But if you want an understandable bad guy to just beat up and not have to go through giant cosmic shenanigans, Dr. Doom is your guy. And because a lot of comic book fans have a bad understanding of Dr. Doom, yes, I said it, this panel feels a little ridiculous. What is Dr. Doom, the man who fights the Fantastic Four on a regular basis, terrorizes New York himself, doing here in this very tragic time, and crying, literally crying at the death and destruction at hand? We understand it as a literary device, that this real world tragedy is bad, and that the fiction of Marvel is not so callous to throw it under the rug. Most people understand this idea, and just look at it being Dr. Doom as kind of funny. The very basic understanding of this character would make you think he probably wouldn't be there. He wouldn't show the emotions that he's showing, and it's just a little incongruous. And that's where I shove a giant pointed finger in their face and go, "You're wrong, sirs, ma'ams, and non-binary folk. You see, you are forgetting a major concept of Dr. Doom's character that is a core component of what makes him a fascinating villain, and simultaneously one of the greatest villains. Dr. Doom thinks he is a hero. Dr. Doom believes he is the hero. And this is shown in 3 major stories. The first one being the classic Emperor Doom. In this story, Doom takes advantage of the Purple Man's powers. If you don't know who the Purple Man is, basic idea is through psychic bullshit and pheromones, he's able to mind control and force anybody to do what he wants for as long as they're nearby him. Just kind of a B-level bad guy though, not really a headliner, that is until Jessica Jones much later on, but this video isn't about her. But by taking advantage of those powers and his own technology, Doom is able to basically mind control the entire world to do what he wants them to do. So what does Doom make them do? Stop all wars, end world hunger, erase homelessness. This is one of the first true examples of what Doom wants to do. He doesn't want power just for power's sake. Not just that. He desires power in order to force his ideals onto the world so that no one should go hungry. That war is pointless, that we can move forward by working together. The only flaw is Doom thinks the only way that you can do this is if everybody shuts up and follows him. Of course, the story can't just let Doom win and put the whole world into a totalitarian government. Long story short, Power Man, classic Avenger, is able to get through the mind control, save the other Avengers, and ultimately, they save the day. You can't force the world into peace and prosperity. We have to earn it, and we have to work towards it ourselves. Doom does think this is a little bullshit, but what are you gonna do? That's what makes him a bad guy. Second story that really emphasizes this is Secret Wars. Not the classic 80s one, no, the more recent Jonathan Hickman one. It's a bit complicated, so I'll try to keep it brief, just to give you what you need to know about Doom. The universe was being destroyed. As a response, Doom stole a huge amount of power to basically format the remaining bits of reality into something that can survive. Not good, not perfect, but survivable. Honestly, post-apocalyptic even. But several things got in his way, mainly his hate for Richards, his seeming acceptance of what can work and not what should be, and his own ego and mania ruining his ultimate plan. Fundamentally, he just wanted to save people, but on his terms, and with a massive amount of worship to prove he's right. Third example of this is still going on at the time of writing this video. In short, what is going on is a big comic story event where Dr. Doom gets the powers of the Sorcerer Supreme. So far, he's basically asked the Avengers, okay, why don't you do more in solving the world's problems? You could depose every dictator and bring world peace. The Avengers point out that they're basically there to be a rescue service, that they can't force anybody to do anything. Doom calls them out and says that they're cowards, and so far the storyline seems to be heading into a direction of Doom once again trying to fix the world the way he thinks it needs to be fixed, and not the way that everyone learning how to not break it, or feeling the responsibility to not break it, would do. So yeah, slightly complicated dude. And by no means am I saying that Doom is actually right and a good guy. No, Doom is a bad man because fundamentally he is misunderstanding his own intentions in relation to his own ego and the fundamental goal of helping others. Put it like this, Superman wants to help humanity because he sees the best in us. Doom wants to help humanity because he thinks we're too stupid to do it ourselves. And fundamentally, that is key to Doom's character. He believes he's the only one responsible enough to hold the keys to anything. So let's go back to the comic with him in New York shedding that tear. That is not a grand villain who wants to destroy New York in the Fantastic Four for no good reason. That is Dr. Doom. A man who has repeatedly, time and time and time and time and time again, tried to fix the world with his own hands and has been repeatedly stopped by people he sees as simple interlopers. And at this tragedy, at this heartbreaking, gaping wound of every problem he sees in the world, war, conflict, ideology, coming together to kill dozens, hundreds of people. In my mind, Doom is simply thinking, I could have stopped this. If only they had listened to me. If only they had done what I said, none of this would have happened. Doom is crying not for the loss of life, for the tragedy, but for the fact that he can't do enough. He wants to save the world, but time and time again he has been stopped by people who cannot see the bigger picture. Crying here makes perfect sense to me. Who wouldn't feel sad if they felt that they could do more?
A huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, including Esconde.